So today we will start with the network layer, and in the network layer we will see the concept of IP and some other concepts of the network layer. Post that we will go to the transport layer, and we'll understand the TCP protocol, the UDP protocol, how they function, and all of these things. So basically, two important concepts from network layer and transport layer is the agenda for today. And this will be a, like, if we complete it before time, we will end the class there only. And if it is like too much for you, we can end the class early as well. It is not like if it is getting too much technical, you have to get it in your head. So at any point of time, if it is too much, just let me know. We'll just stop there, and we'll resume after wherever we left. We'll resume after it tomorrow. And one more thing that is for today is that we'll take the session in with minimum 1 or 2 breaks, so that it will not be at a stretch. We'll take short breaks as well once we complete a good part of any particular topic. So we'll have breaks in between as well. So now let's start with the networking concepts. And in the networking concept, we discussed all these things. Now it's the time for the network layer. So we understood that in the OSI model, we have several layers, and network layer is the third layer after physical layer and the data link layer. So in the network layer, there is the most important concept that is called as the IP concept. We know that in the network layer, the thing that is responsible is logical addressing. In the data link layer, it was physical addressing. And in the network layer, it is the logical addressing, means it is done with the IP address. Every device that is there in the internet connected to any particular network will have a IP address, which can be static as well as dynamic. But it can change depending upon if the network is same or the network is getting changed. So here we will look into the IP protocol. So IP is the internet protocol address which is used to establish the connection. It is like a logical address which is used for the communication, because for the communication between any two parties we need identity for those two parties, and IP address serves as the identity for those systems involved in the network to communicate. In the IP we have two versions, IP version 4 and IP version 6. Both of them functions in the same manner, but the only difference is the address space and the um, way how the addresses are being established, how the addresses are being assigned. So it has two versions, IP version 4 and IP version 6. And every IP will have two paths. You can see any IP, be it be from version 4 or version 6, it will have two paths, namely network ID and the host ID. In the network ID, which will be like the left part of the IP, it will be the point from where we are getting the network. So network ID will give you the information on the network, to which network you are connected, from which network you are getting the access to the internet. Then there comes the host ID, which is the right part of the IP. And this particular host ID will tell you how many multiple number of hosts you can connect. For example, a particular network can connect only 10 hosts, means in that network only 10 devices can get access to the internet. It has the capability to serve 10 hosts. So the host ID will tell you how many number of multiple hosts you can connect. At the same time, what will be the IP for those all hosts. So the combination of IP, which is with the network and host, will be always unique in the network. And being for this particular uniqueness, what will happen, every particular device will be identified at its own, and there won't be any problem in the communication, and everyone can get to know from which network they are communicating, particular which host they have to communicate, which information they have to provide. So all these things can be easily managed with just two parts of the IP, that is network ID and the host ID. Again, it is not a big thing. It is just network ID will give you the information on the network. Host ID will give you the information on the host. Network is the point from where we are getting access to the internet. Host is the thing which who is getting the access to the internet. For example, right now, let's say I'm connected with an ISP from Airtel. So Airtel is my network provider, and I am the host to which the particular router is serving to me at my home. So this is how you correlate the network and the host together, and all together they will form the IP. Both the version 4 and 6 will have these kinds of design, network plus host. Is that clear? Understanding of host and IP and network in IP? Good. Now, let's understand with a diagram how to understand the network and the host. So here you can see you have a router A. Router will also have an IP address, right? Because everything which is there in the network has to be identified with some address, and that address is the IP address. Now you can see router is there, server is there, and there are multiple hosts which are connected through the bus configuration here. So in this particular dark greenish part, you can see there is a network ID for class C. We will discuss about these classes also. There is a network ID which is named as 192.168.0, and you can see all the host and the router and the server who are the part of this particular network are having 192.168.0 same. They don't have any changes in the network part because they belong to the same network. So if you belong to the same network, you will share the same network ID. But every host is unique, every IP has to be unique, and for that purpose, you will have the unique host part. So router A is having dot 1, then host A is having dot 2, host B dot 3, host C dot 4, and so on, server dot 6. So here you can see this particular network belongs to class C. You don't need to worry why it is class C, why not A and B, and what are the classes. We will discuss about it. Just for your information here, you can see there is a class C network which has the network ID as 192.168.0, and every device which is there in the part of this network is having the same network ID, and the host ID varies for each host. And now this combination, network ID plus host ID, will make every address unique. Every device will be uniquely served with the logical address of the IP. So this is how network and host work together. Now, the IP version 4. So this IP version 4 is the first variation of the IP address, and it is having 32-bit of size. So the size of any IPv4 version is having 32 bits, meaning that it has 4 octant. 4 octant mean every particular octant will have 8 bits, and combination of those 8 bits will give you a string of 32 bits. So the entire address will be having the length of 32 bit. This particular 32 bit will uniquely and universally identify the connection of a device. It can be anything which is connected to the internet. Now this particular IPv version 4 is unique, definitely we have understood, where each address define only one and only one connection to the internet. So it is not like with one particular kind of IP you can have multiple connection. No, with that particular IP you can have only one connection. Two devices on the internet can never share the same address at the same time. So the thing is like one particular IP, let's say you connected to some public Wi-Fi, so you will get a IP for particular time. Now once you are connected to that IP, nobody else accessing the same public Wi-Fi will have the same address, same IP address assigned to them. Once you disconnect it and you free that IP address, then that particular address can be given to somebody else. But remember, when we say uniqueness, it is with the same address and not at the same time. So nobody can have the same address at the same time in the internet. So it makes the entire system unique, and easily you are able to identify to which one to communicate. This particular address bit, like 32 bit, is the size of the address. So how many addresses it can support? So if you have 32 bits, and you know that in binary we can have only two options, that is 0 and 1. So you have only two options. Now if I say 32 bits are there and every particular bit has two options, either to get it filled by 0 or to get it filled by 1, how many possible addresses I can have? Means the size, the number of addresses I can have. So that will be 2 to the power 32. because for every position I have two choices, and how many positions I have? I have 32 positions, so 2 to the power 32 will be the address space, meaning this IPv version 4 can support almost more than 4 billion addresses at the same time in the internet. So if you are using IPv version 4 at its full capacity, what will be the result? You can have more than around like 4 billion and something, the number is shown on your screen. This particular number of hosts you can connect to the internet at the same time. Okay, and this is like theoretical thing because it is 2 to the power 32, so it is theoretical, but you can see 4 billion sounds something which is very big in number, but at the end when we will see rising of the number of devices that wants the access of the internet, you can easily see that there are more than 4 billion devices which are accessing the internet at the same time. So the address space provided by IPv version 4 is not sufficient to serve the emerging demands of the internet accesses. So right now it might be like, oh, 4 billion, but no, it is actually less as compared to the demand. So the supply from IPv version 4 is less as compared to the demand of the increasing number of internet devices. So that's why we have IPv version 6, which allow us to have more address space, giving more number of uh, devices to get connected to. So this is about the IPv version 4 address introduction. Is this okay? You're able to understand what is IPv4, what is the address space, what is the bit size, why we have 2 to the power 32 as the address space, and why it is not sufficient. Okay. Now, how to denote it? Like we have IP. Now, how we will denote the IPs? So there are two major ways in which we can write an IP in two notations. One is the binary notation and another is the dotted decimal notation. So binary notation, definitely it will be in form of 0 and 1, and decimal notation will be having anything between 0 to 9. So you have 10 particular numbers, and combination of those numbers will serve you the dotted decimal notation. So here what you have when you say IP in the binary notation, if you have 32 bits, definitely you will have 32 bits, and they will give you, like you don't have to write the 32 bits like this without any spaces. You have to write the 32 bits in the octant. So these 32 bits are divided in octant. 4 octants are there. So how do we got 4? 32 by 8, because octant in one octant there can be maximum 8 bits. So 32 by 8, that will give you 4. So 4 combination of 8 bits will give you the entire IPv4 address. Now you can have any kind of combination between 0 and 1, and that particular thing will be written like this and will be counted as the binary notation. Now what about the dotted decimal notation? You will simply convert the binary number into the decimal number and we'll write the decimal equivalent of that. It is easy for us to write the numbers in the decimals because we are not good with 0 and 1, but definitely these particular numbers get converted to the binary notation once the system is involved, because system understands 0 and 1 only. So we will take for our account whenever we will discuss anything, for an example or for in any books, you will find the dotted decimal notation, but at the end it is getting converted to the binary notation. But you can have access to both, and majorly it is decimal notation which is used. Even when you type any IP address in your address bar, you don't type the combination of 0 and 1. You type it like like if I say localhost, you will type the loop address of that particular local host. So that is also in the decimal notation. It get translated to the binary from the services which are running behind the scene. So this is about the notations of the IP version 4. IPv version 6 is denoted differently. We will see it there, but IPv version 4 is having two notation, binary and dotted decimal. Now, there are two types of IPs. One is the private IP, one is the public IP. So what is the private IP? Whenever the communication happen over a LAN environment, we use the private IP. And it is provided by IANA, which is called as Internet Assigned Number Authority. So IANA is responsible to provide you the private IP, and these IPs can be used in a LAN environment and are free for everyone, and they have a range only. In that range only you can use the private IPs. What about public IPs? Public IPs are provided by ISPs that are called as internet service provider. And here the communication happen in the internet environment where anyone can see your IP address. Okay, you have different ways to hide your IP. That is a different thing. But at the end, if you are getting the service from the ISP, the IP that you are getting is the public IP. Then you have a NAT router. NAT router is called as network address translation. So what happens, sometimes you might be interested to communicate from a public IP to a private IP, or from a private IP to the public IP. Both the ways you can communicate. You never know whichever server you are pinging that belongs to a private IP or to a public IP. So there needs to be a kind of translation in between. So whenever communication happens from private to public or public to private, this NAT sits in between and will help you to translate the uh, addresses so that the communication can be easy. So these are the three more keywords that you should know when you say IP. Now, after the IP introduction, we have the new concept that is called as network mask. You might have heard the mask of class A, B, and C, and so on, and or without any classes also you must have heard about the mask. So what is this mask? Mask is nothing, it is just a mathematical tool which is used for solving the networking problems. When I say solving of the networking problems, it is not that numerical which we solve in our daily life. It is the how you have to establish the network, how many hosts you have to connect, how to assign, how to link them, all these particular things which you need to calculate with the help of network mask. So network mask is that tool with which you actually put whatever you have in your brain for the network into practical implementation. Now, there are default masks. Default masks are the masks which should not be changed. And for every class, we have default mask. Now, when I say classes, there are 5 classes, but default mask exists for only 3 classes. And we are interested to look only in these 3 classes, which is A, B, and C. Other classes are D and E, which we will not be having any interaction with. But this class A, B, and C will be having the default mask, the subnet, supernetting, and all those concepts. We will discuss them also. So class A default mask, you have to remember them. It is 255.0.0.0. Why the number is 255? If you see that every particular octant is having 8 bits, so how much capacity one octant will have? It will be 2 to the power 8. And you have 0 in between also. So you cannot write 256. So that's why you have to write 255. Okay. So 255 is the maximum capacity of one particular octant because it has 0 also. Now, class B will have the default mask as 255.255.0.0 and class C will go like 255.255.255.0. Now, by looking at this default mask, there is one information that you have to understand. We know that the IP is having 2 parts. One is the network part, other is the host part. In the network part is the first, the left side part is the network part and the right hand side part is the host part. Networks are represented by 1. Networks are represented by 1. Hosts are represented by 0. So in this case, when I say class A has the default mask of 255.0.0, if you convert this 255 decimal to binary, you will have the string with all ones. That means it is the network part. So in the class A, the network part is 255, which is the first octant only. And the default like the host is 0.0.0. So this is how you read it. So how many network part in class A? 255, that is 1 octant. How many host part? 3 octant, that is 0.0.0. In class B, 2 part for the network and 2 part for the host. In class C, 3 part for the network and 1 part for the host. Okay, so this is how you read a default mask. Is this clear? Is this clear? Yes or no? Okay. Now, classful addressing. Because there are 2 kinds of addressing. One is the classless addressing and other is the classful addressing. In classful addressing, what happens? We have divided something called as classes. And here, what we see that we have 5 classes, A, B, C, D, and E. And you can see with a particular representation here in the binary as well as in dotted decimal, how we represent each one of them. So class A, class B, class C, class D, and class E, they will have the range also, like what should be the capacity for every particular octant defined with the default mask. So here you will see that once you have something in the binary notation for class A, the very first byte of the network part is reserved. The very first byte of the network part is reserved, which is denoted by 0. I think I have better slides to show you this. Yes, I have better slides for this thing, so we will discuss that part there. Then if you will come to this particular diagram with the binary notation and dotted decimal notation, you will understand what I'm talking about here. So basically classful addressing is using the concept of classes, and this particular architecture is having 5 classes A, B, C, D, and E, and every particular thing class A, B, C, D, and E will have 4 octants, and the first bytes or the first bytes either in the decimal notation or in the dotted in the binary notation will decide that the address belongs to which class. So this is we will discuss after 2-3 slides, but just don't bother why it is 0, why it is 10, then 110. We'll discuss that also. Now, net ID and host ID. We have discussed about the network part and the host part. So A, B, C, these 3 classes are divided into the network part and the host part. Okay. And these parts are of varying length. We have seen that in the class A, we have 1 part for the network, 3 part for the host. Class B, 2 part for network, 2 part for host. And class C, 3 part for the network and 1 part for the host. So depending upon which class you are talking about, the network and host part will vary. And the concept of these network and host does not apply to class D and E. So now our area of concentration will be A, B, and C. And whatever I have told you, that is only being written here. Now, you have to get a trick to remember some important decimal number, because you cannot waste your time to convert the decimal to binary or binary to decimal every time you see a number. So there are some special numbers for which you should remember the binary notation and the decimal notation. So what you have to do, you have to write something like this: 1 and then 2 1 and then 3 1, and so goes on with the 7 1. I think it is 7 only. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8. Yeah. So you have to write like this. What will happen for the very first one? What you have 8 places, right? In every octant you have 8 places. So the very first thing that is being here, I will write it also so that it will be better. So for this, how we interpret it? We interpret it like 1, and then we we know that in octant there will be 8 places. So how many places are remaining? If I have 1, then how many places are remaining? 8 places are remaining. 7 are remaining, right? 1 2 3 4 5 6 7. Now if you combine them all, it will be 1 octant. And if you convert this particular number to the decimal, you will have the equivalent as 120 and 8. So 128 is this one. So when I say 1, you have to make it like 1 followed by 7 zeros, and you will get 128. So whenever you see 128, immediately this number should strike in your head. So what you have to do, you have to remember this pattern, because this is very important trick, and it is going to help you a lot when you are going to solve any particular numerical on IP. Now when I say about double one, so it will be like double one. Now how many spaces do I have? 8 minus 2, right? It will be 6. Now if you convert this number to decimal, you will get 192. So this is how you need to know. If for this, you will just go and see how many zeros you can accommodate here, and you will just put like that. So these are the very important things. Now one more thing that you can interpret from this. If I say I know the decimal number, or I know the binary number for 128, what I know from this number as an implicit information is the binary number for 127 as well. If I make 0, and like I will just make a 2s complement of it. How you make a 2s complement? Convert 0 to 1. Okay, so 0 and then followed by 7 ones. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7. If you convert this number, you will have 127. So if you know 128, you already know 127. If you know 192, what you know? You know 191 as well. You know 191 as well, right? So from these numbers, because these numbers are special, we will look into why these numbers are special. And these are the numbers which you are going to encounter a lot, and most of the time it will be the numbers which are like the odd numbers, like 127, 191, these numbers. So most of the time, 97%, 99% of the cases in the numericals, you will find these numbers only. If you find any weird new number, definitely you have to convert it and find the, and you don't have any choice there. But otherwise you can save your time by not converting the decimal to binary and doing all those LCM stuff. Okay, so is this trick clear? How to like use this trick? Okay, now the mask. We were talking about the mask, and this is how the mask is denoted in the binary as well as in dotted. In dotted, we have seen how to write it 255.0.0, then so goes on. And what will be the binary notation for that? For 0, it will be all the 8 bits will be 0. For 255, all the 8 bits will be set to 1. So this is how we write the mask in the binary and the dotted. Now let's decode every class, network part and the host part. So we have seen that the network in the class A, we have one part for the network and 3 part for the host. So you can see I have written 3 parts of 8 bits as the host ID and one part of the 8 bits as the network ID. But here I have reserved 0, and then I have provided the range from 7 zeros to 7 ones. So in class A, the very first bit of the network ID is fixed to 0. Means any network which is the part of class A, if you write a binary number for that particular network part, it will always start with 0, because 0 is fixed as an identification bit to identify that this particular network belongs to class A. So there has to be some set of identifiers, and 0 is the identifier for class A. If I fix 0, I have the control over remaining 7 bits. I can set those 7 bits to either 0 or 1. That will give me how many combination? I have 7 bits, so I can have 2 to the power 7 combinations, right? What is this 7? 7 is 8 minus 1. Why 8? Because octant has 8 bits. Why I am subtracting 1? Because 0 is fixed. I cannot change it. So I have control over 7 bits. So it is 2 to the power 7. Then you can see I have done 2 to the power 7 minus 2, right? Why this 2 is subtracted? This 2 is subtracted because there are two special IPs. One IP, if you see, will have all zeros, and the other IP will have all ones. So the one that is having all zeros doesn't make any sense. If everything is set to 0, means there is no network. So that particular, like if I say how many networks class A support, so how many network class A support? 2 to the power 7. But how many valid numbers class A supports? It is 2 to the power 7 minus 2. And one is with all the zeros, which has no meaning, and the other is having 0 followed by all ones, which has a special meaning of broadcasting. When you say Doordarshan, Doordarshan is accessible to everyone. You just need a setup and you can get access to it, because Doordarshan is a broadcasted channel. Doordarshan is not providing any set of rules to say that I will be not accessible to this set of geographical location. I'm talking only about India. So in India, you can access this Doordarshan from anywhere because it is a broadcasting channel. For other channels, you might need a membership, you might need a different kind of stuff for the authentication, but that is something which is broadcasted. Broadcasted means without any kind of discrimination, you are sending the information to everyone who is the part of the network or the part of that geographical area. So here two meanings are there, one for all zeros and one for all ones. One for all zero doesn't make any sense, and one for all ones have a special meaning which we can't change. That is the broadcasting. So that's why we remove two numbers, that is 0 and 1 in all combination, and the network ID in class A will give you 2 to the power 7 minus 2. Same goes with the host ID. If all the hosts are set to 0, doesn't make any sense. If all the bits of host is set to 1, we also have broadcasting of that thing. So we don't want that also. So that's why we will do the same for the host ID also. And here I have written 2 to the power 24 minus 2. How come 24? We know that 3 parts for the host ID. So 8 plus 8 plus 8, that is 24. So 2 to the power 24 minus 2. Why is this 2 minus? because of all the zeros in one combination and all the ones in other combination. So this is how you get the number of hosts. How many number of hosts you can connect in class A, 2 to the power 24 minus 2. How many networks you can get in class A, 2 to the power 7 minus 2. Remember this, because people in hurry, they take 2 to the power 8 or 2 to the power 7, or like they don't remember how to make this minus 2. They forget it in hurry. So don't do this mistake. Now let's focus on class B. So for class B, we have 2 parts for network and 2 parts for the host. In class B, I am setting 2 bits as a static, the initial 2 bits, which are called as 1 and 0. So 1 and 0 will be like, if any address is starting with 1 and 0, you will say that this particular address belongs to class B. Okay, you will say this particular address belongs to class B, and that's why how many networks I will have? I have 16-bit address space for the network part, but 2 bits are reserved. So I have to do 2 to the power 16 minus 2, and ultimately a minus 2 for all zeros and ones. Similarly, how many host bits I have? I have 8 plus 8, 16 bits for the host, and it will go like 2 to the power 16 minus 2. Is this okay? How you are calculating the number of addresses in class B? Yes or no? Okay. Now class C. In class C, with a similar pattern, you will have 3 parts for the network. That will give you 2 to the power 24 minus 3. Why this minus 3? Because here I have reserved initial 3 bits which are set to 110. Not specifically to say 110, 110 should be the correct meaning because it is in binary. So 110 is already been fixed. If any particular address is starting with 110, we will say that the address belongs to class C. Now, how many parts for the network? We have 3 parts for the networks, and it will give us 8 plus 8 plus 8. So that will be 24. But I have reserved 3 bits. So 2 to the power 24 minus 3, and whole value gets subtracted with 2 because of all zeros and 1 coming in the combination of network part. Then there will be the host part. It will have 8 bits only, like 1 octet. So 2 to the power 8 minus 2 for all zeros and 1. So these are the number of networks and hosts that you can connect to class C. Remember these numbers, these are the magical numbers, and if you are lucky, you can find a direct MCQ for this number only. They might be written in some different way, like 2 to the power 24 minus 3 will not be written like this. It will be 2 to the power 21 minus 2. So you have to remember it. I have written it in a decoded format so that you understand why we have done minus 3, why we have done minus 2. Now, these are the questions that whatever we have discussed, we will solve these problems so that we get to know that the things we have understood are actually staying in our head. So you have 3 things, 1, 2, and 3. And here, okay, I think one thing is remaining. Okay, give me a second. I have to give you one more screenshot for one particular thing, and from there you will have to get the idea how to identify in the decimal notation about the classes. Just hold on for a minute. Okay, so this is one extra information that you need to know. When we say the range of classes, so there is a range of class, and once you see something in the binary notation, you know how to identify the class. So if something is starting with 0, you immediately say it is class A. If something is starting with 10, you say class B. If something is starting with 110, you say class C. Now, what if the representation is done in the decimal format? If the representation is done in the decimal format, these are the range that you have to see in the first octet value. Means the value which is written in the first octet. So if the value is in between 0 to 127, it belongs to class A. If the value is from 128 to 191, class B. If the value is from 192 to 223, it is class C. And in class D, you have 224 to 239. And in class E, you have 242 to 255. Right? You can see class D and E are reserved for the multicasting and experimental purposes. That's why we don't get involved with class D and E. And now you also can get to see these octant values 127, 128, 223, 239, why they are special and why this trick is important. You can see you will find these numbers because these are the starting and ending range of the classes, and it will be very helpful once you start using this trick for the conversion of the numbers. Now make a note of this particular second table where you have class A, B, C and the value, that is 0, 127, 128, 191, 192 and 223. Make it somewhere with you right now so that we can solve the problem and I don't have to go back to the slide again and again. So in this particular question, you have to find the class, network ID and the host ID of the IPs which are being listed here. So the very first question I can solve for you and remaining two you will solve. So the first IP is 5.7.2.1. It is in which format? It is in the decimal dotted format. Now, when the things are in decimal, we know that we have to look at the very first octant, and depending upon the value which is there in the very first octant, we will decide to which class it belongs. So very first thing is to find the class. So we can see from the table that class A belongs with the range of 0 to 127. So you have 5 here and 5 falls in the range of 0 to 127. So what will be the class for IP1? For the very first question, the class will be class A. When I get to know the class, I can know how many octants are there for the network part and how many octants are there for the host part. So if you remember class A, you have 1 octant for network and 3 octants for the host. So first will be the network ID and it will be the very first octant. So your network ID will be 5.0.0.0, or you can simply write 5. That is also okay. Then what is the host ID? Host ID for your IPs. Host ID for the very first IP will be 7.2.1 because we have 3 parts for the host. So this is how we can say with the very first IP 5.7.2.1, the class is A, the network is 5, the host is 7.2.1. Right? Is this understood? Solve the question number 2. Class B, 192 belongs to class C. That's why I've said to make a note for this, and this IP 190. Yeah. So yes, class B. And what is the network part and the host part? In class B, we have 2 parts for the network and 2 parts for the host. Solve the problem number 2 first. The network part for 190.172.251.11. Yes, the network part will be 190.172. And the host part? Yes, 255, 251.11. Now solve question number 3. Question number 3, class is C. That is true. What is the network ID? Network ID? Network ID will be 211.11.15 because we have 3 octants for class C. Yes, it will be 211.11.15 and the host ID will be 21. Yes, perfect. So this is how you calculate the things, and in the next slide you have the solutions, and I have written the solutions like this so that once you have your PPT for the revision you can easily do it. So that is good that you are able to understand the class, network and the host concept. Now the next kind of questions that you will be able to see is find the class and network ID and host ID of the below IP which has been mentioned with the mask. So till now you only got the IP and you were asked to tell the class, network and host. Now you are asked one extra question, that is it subnetted or not, and you have been given a mask also. So first tell me what is the class, network and host ID for 195.168.255.0. First tell me these three things, then I will tell you how to identify whether it is subnetted or not. Class C, okay. Network ID, yes, 195.168.255. And host, yes, perfect. Host is 0, yes. Now the next extra question which is asked here, is it subnetted or not? So how to identify whether it is subnetted or not? You remember the concept of default mask. What is the default mask for class C? It is 255.255.255.0. And in the question, it is same. It is not changed. So if your default mask is not changed, then you say that the network is not subnetted. If your default mask is changed, you say the network is subnetted. What we mean by subnet? Meaning one particular network is divided to get more number of network. So from a very big network, let's say there is one big network, and I have created two smaller sub networks out of that big network. So that particular process is called as subnetting. Then there is another concept that is called as supernetting. Supernetting means combining two or more than two small networks into one bigger network. So depending upon the organization need, sometimes they do subnetting, sometimes they do supernetting. So here in this question, the extra question which is asking you, is it subnetted? So first you will see the default mask. Whenever anybody asks you whether it is subnetted or not, you go and see the default mask. 255, 255, 255.0. The IP belongs to class C. Nothing is changed. So it is not subnetted. The answer to this is not subnetted. It is not subnetted as the default mask is same for class C. Okay. And here it is dot 1, not dot 0, sorry. It is dot 1. I think in the question, here it was written 0 and there it was written 1. So I will make it 1. Okay. So that is all true. Now, let's see this question. So now tell me, what is the class, network ID and host ID, and is it subnetted or not? The very first question. Is it subnetted or not? First answer class, network, host, and then tell me is it subnetted or not. If it is subnetted, then we will solve the further question. How many number of subnets? How many hosts per subnet? Find the valid first host, last host, and the broadcasting IP for the two subnets. We will solve these further questions once we conclude is it subnetted as yes or not. So class C, yes. Yes. 195.168.0, good. Now the host, yes, host is also this one. And it is subnetted, yes. How you can say it, that it is subnetted? Because you can see the default mask is no more 255, 255, 255.0. It is rather, yes, it is rather, no, not 11 in the last. You are seeing the IP, see the mask. 255.255.255.192. So instead of having 0, you are having 192, which is not correct. It is correct, but it is not the default mask basically. So that's why we have it as the subnetted. You have to see the mask when you say it is subnetted or not. So the answer to this particular question, is it subnetted? Yes. Okay, meaning that we have created more number of networks out of this particular mask. Now, how many networks have we created? Meaning how many number of subnets we have created? What are the number of hosts per subnet? And like if you can see, let's say there was originally one network having 100 hosts. Now I have divided it into two networks having 50 hosts each. So now my question is, how many subnets I have created, means how many parts I have done to the original network, and how many number of hosts I have put in each subnet. And what is the starting of every subnet? What is the ending of every subnet by the first host and the last host? And what is the broadcasting IP of the two subnets? Because we have one special IP that is called as broadcasting IP, where everything is set to 1. So we will calculate all these things here. In the exam, you will not have to calculate in the manner which I will show you right now. It is just for understanding how the networks are made. In the exam, there will be a shortcut and you will be using that only. But for initial understanding, you need to go through this process so you understand how the networks behave basically. So basically, till this point of time, you are all clear that it is subnetted because the default mask is not the same which is for class C. Now, the next thing that you have to calculate is, if it is yes, the number of subnets. So how many number of subnets we have to calculate? You have to see which part is changed. We will go back to the mask. We will see the mask is not 255, 255, 255.0. The changed part is 192. Now you convert this 192 into the binary. Okay. And you can see, if you remember that trick, you can easily write 11 followed by 6 zeros. And this is the binary conversion for 192. So the very first thing that you have to do is to look at the part which is changed. Convert the changed part into the binary equivalent. Once you convert that thing, count the number of ones. I have stated in the starting only that 1 is responsible for network, 0 is responsible for host. So if I have to count the networks, means I have to count the sub networks. How I will count it? I will count the number of ones which are there in the part of the modified value. That is with the formula of 2 to the power n minus 2. We have to do minus 2 here again because of that 0 and 1 combination. So 2 to the power n minus 2. What is this n? The number of ones. So how many 1 are there in 192? 2 1 are there, right? So 2 to the power 2 minus 2, that is 4 minus 2 equal to 2. So out of the original network, I have created 2 sub-networks. Now, how many number of hosts per subnet I have created or I am allowed to have? Hosts are denoted by 0, right? Hosts are denoted by 0 and the formula is same, 2 to the power n minus 2. How many zeros I have in 192? I have 6 zeros. So it will be 2 to the power 6 minus 2. Calculation will give you 62 by the logic of 64 minus 2. So this is how you calculate number of subnet, number of host per subnet. So number of subnet, again I am repeating, look at the part which is changed, convert it to the decimal to binary, count the number of ones, then apply the formula 2 to the power n minus 2, where n is the number of 1. If you are calculating the subnets, n will be number of zeros once you are calculating the host. So by this formula, you can calculate these two things. Now, how to find the valid subnet, first host, last host, broadcasting IP? For this particular thing, again, we have to see what next we can do. We know that the maximum capacity is 256, right? We write it 255 because we have included 0. But if I take a modulus of it, it is 256 at the end. The maximum capacity is 256. The changed value is 192. So you will do every time 256 minus 192. So 256 minus the number that is changed. It will give you 64. So 64 will be the starting of your first valid subnet. Now add 64 and get a new value. You will get 128. Now add 64 to 128. You will get 192. And this will be invalid. How come 192 is invalid? Because you see that you have created only 2 subnets, right? You can see in the pink side, you have created only 2 subnets. So that's why you will stick only to the 2 numbers, that is 60, like 64 will be the first one and the second one will be 64 plus 64, 128. You can go on increasing this number, but you know that you have only 2 subnets. So you will have only 2 valid things, which is 64 and 128. Now, how to calculate the first, last and the broadcasting IP? You have to write the subnet, then the first host, last host and the broadcasting IP in this table. Like this, you have to make an arrangement. Now, look at the initial IP. What is the IP? 195.168.0.11, right? Now, 195.168.0 is the part which is the part of network, which is unchanged. So you will keep it as it is. Which part is changed? The part that is changed is the 192, that is the host part. So this 11 will no longer be 11 for your subnet. For your subnet, it will go like 64 because you have got 64 from the subtraction of 256 minus 192. So you have got 64. So 195.168.0.64 will be your first subnet. Your second subnet will be similar number followed by .128. From where we got 128, 64 plus 64. Now the first host will be addition of 1 to the subnet. So addition of 1 to the subnet will give you 65. Then similarly addition of 1 to the 128 will give you 129. So these two will be the first host of your subnet. Now how to get the broadcasting IP of the subnet 1, which is the first one? You have to do -1 to 128. So do a -1 to 128, you will get 127. Now do a -1 to 127, you will get 126. So you have to go in the forward direction as well as in the reverse direction to know the last host and the broadcasting IP. So you can see now the entire subnet is interconnected and is continuous also. Meaning start from 195.168.0.64 and the last broadcasting is 127. You can see in 127 it is all 1. In 191, once you convert it to the binary, you will get all 1. And this is how you write for the subnet, first host, last host, and the broadcast IP. Is this clear? Yes or no? We will solve one more problem so that you can have a practice on it. I will give you the link to join the second session so that we will continue from there. Okay, so we will try to solve one more problem, and this is just for understanding. This is not how you have to do it in the class or in your actual exam. This is just for the understanding to get a vibe of how the networks behave and how they are being, like what is supernetting concept, what is subnetting concepts, to get them settled in your head. Now let's solve this question. Tell me first the class, network ID and the host ID of the IP, and then tell me is it subnetted, yes or no. If yes, the number of subnet and host per subnet, and then you have to make a table for the valid subnet, first host, last host, broadcasting IP of the two subnets. I will show you the solution also once you start solving it, or like we are done halfway. Then I will keep you posted with the answers. So class C, okay, 202.16.10, yes, correct. And the host is 11, yes. Now is it subnetted? Yes. So now tell me how many subnets we have. So for that you have to convert 224 into decimal, into binary. Convert 224 into binary. And for that you will remember this trick. I will show you that slide. You can see 224. You have to write 3 ones followed by 5 0 and you will get the IP for binary conversion for the 224. So 224 binary is 3 times 1 followed by 5 times 0. Yes, this is the this thing for the binary. Now you have to tell me what is the number of subnets. So for the number of subnets, you have to count the number of 1 and apply the formula of 2 to the power n minus 2. So apply the formula of 2 to the power n minus 2, where n is the number of 1 in the changed part. Yes, that will be 2 to the power 3 minus 2, meaning 8 minus 2 equal to 6. Good. Now number of host per subnet. For host, apply the same formula, but keep in power the value of n equal to the number of zeros you have. So that will be 2 to the power 5 minus 2, that is 2 to the power 32. 2 to the power 5 minus 2, 32 minus 2, that will be 30. Yes, so that is correct. So this is how you have to calculate the number of subnet and the host per subnet. And this is all good. So you have calculated it perfectly. Now you have to make the table for the first valid subnet. So first tell me the valid subnets. How, like you have 6 subnets here. You can see you have to find 6 subnets. How you find those 6 subnets? So first you have to do that 256 minus 224. What is the number that you are getting? That will be the first subnet. Then you have to add the same number to the number, you will get the second. Then add the same number to the second one, you will get the third, and so on. You have to do it till you get the 6 numbers. So what is the first one? 256 minus 224. Yes. So it is 32. 256 minus 224, it is 32. So add 32 to the every value to get the next valid subnet, and so on. You will keep on having 64, 96, 128, 160, and then 192. If you add 192 plus 32, you will get 224, which is again invalid because you don't have to go to the 7th number. You have to stick till the 6 numbers. Now you can easily make this table for the subnet, first host, last host, and the broadcasting IP. You have the subnets here. How you have to write the subnets? Keep the initial part of the network which is there in the question IP, that is 202.16.10.11. So you will keep the network part because it is class C, so 3 parts for the network. So 202.16.10 will be same, and then the number that will keep on changing is the number that you have calculated, like this: 32, 64, 96, 128, 160, and 192. You will write like this. Add 1 to every subnet to get the first host. 32 plus 1, 33. 128 plus 1, 129. You will get everything. Now subtract 1 from the subnet to get the broadcasting IP of the previous subnet. So 64 minus 1, 63. 96 minus 1, 95. 128 minus 1, 126. Okay. And this is how you calculate the broadcasting IP. Now subtract 1 from the broadcasting IP to get the last host. So 63 minus 1, 62. 95 minus 1, 94, and so goes on. Is this clear? This entire flow is clear to everyone? Good. Now I have method 2. This method is lengthy. It is good for the university exams, but not for our exams. So there are basically 3 methods to solve the IP problems. This is the method number 2. This is also not what I will recommend you to solve in the papers, but still you can have these so that if you want to use, you can use. So here with method 2, you can directly find the last subnet and the broadcasting IP. So if the question is asking you about the last subnet and the broadcasting IP, you can apply the method number 2. Method number 2 is like this one. So you will get an IP, you will get a mask. You can see the IP belongs to class C and the mask is changed. Mask is changed from 255.255.255.0 to 224. So definitely it is subnet. So now I have to find the subnet mask and the broadcasting IP. If I am asked what is the subnet mask or the broadcasting IP, how I will answer this one. So what I will do, I will convert the changed part to the binaries. 192 is the changed part in the IP and 224 is the changed part in your mask. You will write it like this: 192, and then in the second line you will write the 224 one. Now you will do the AND operation, bitwise AND operation of the 2 part of the IPs. Once you do the AND operation, you will get the result like this: 1 1 followed by 6 zeros. Now once you have this AND operation, you can directly get the subnet mask and the broadcasting IP. What you have to do? You have to make a blue line. You can see there I have marked one line. And what is the point where I decide from where I have to put the line? You have to track the second part of 224. Find the last occurrence of 1. You find the last occurrence of 1 after 3 1. You mark a line from there. You don't change anything which is before 1. And you change everything which is after 1. So you know for the network it is 1, for the hosts it is 0. So if you will convert, if like this particular thing what you have got, right, whatever you have got, this will serve as your subnet address. 1 1 followed by 6 zeros, this will be your subnet address. And how you can get the broadcasting address? Keep 110 same. Why 110 same? Because it is 3 times 1 from where you are marking the line, and then whatever is remaining in the right hand side, set this all to 1, because broadcasting is to everyone. So that's why we set 1 to every particular bit, and you will have the broadcasting as 110 and followed by 5 times 1. So this is how you can directly get the subnet address and the broadcasting IP for that particular combination. Is this trick clear, what we have done here? This is also not that you have to worry to solve the problems. This is just for fun. So if you are clear, you can solve this problem. I think this is, yeah. So we will see one more problem here. Problem number 2. The IP is 205.14.78.68. So you know that this is class C. Change part is 68 and 224. You write the binaries for them. You do the AND operation. Whatever you get from the AND operation, that will serve as the subnet. Then see what is the last occurrence of 1 in the mask part. Create a line there. Set everything beyond that point to 1 to get the broadcasting. So broadcasting will be 010 followed by 5 times 1. Right? So this is how you calculate by method 2. You have 2 more problems to practice. I think, yeah, 4 more problems to practice for your method 2 if you want to. You can solve this problem using method 1 or method 2. So this is just for fun if you want to practice more or want to get some more hands-on. So it is for homework. Now the method 3. Every time we will apply method 3 only. And now you will see how easy it is to apply method number 3. And after doing method number 3, we will take a short break and then we will start with the further topics. Method number 3. Method number 3, what it says, for example, I have the IP and I have the mask. Now I am smart enough to see that the particular combination is subnetted or not. So definitely it is not the default mask. It is changed. 255, 255, 255.240. It is changed. So it is subnetted, right? Now I can ask, if I ask you, what is the IP for the first subnet first host or second subnet third host? I ask this directly. Then how you will calculate? If I ask you something like this, how you will calculate? If you will calculate it from the method number 1, you have seen how lengthy it is. Calculation from method number 2 is not possible because there we get only the broadcasting IP and the subnet mask. We don't get the specific IP inside any specific subnet. So this trick number 3 will serve all the purposes which can be served by 1 and 2 method. At the same time, it will serve those answers, those questions which are not served by approach 1 and 2. So what we will do here, first you will see what is the class. Class is C, right? Now you will convert 240 into the binary because 240 is changed. What is the change part? It is 240. So you will convert this number to binary. Once you convert this number to binary, you can see you are having 0, 1, 0, 0 and 1, 1, 1 or something like this. Give me a second. Okay. Yes. So first of all, you have to convert 240 into binary. That will be 1111 followed by 4 times 0. Now this 43 is also there. So you have to convert the binary of this 43. So once you convert the binary to for like a decimal of 43 to binary, you will have 0, 1, 0, and 4 times 1. Okay. Now what? You know, for the networks we have 1, for the host we have zeros. Look at 240. The part which is having 1 is responsible for subnets. The part which is 0 is responsible for host. So if I say first subnet first host, I have the control over 4 ones. If I have to write the binary of 1, if I have to write the binary of 1, how I will write? I will write it like 0, 0, 0 and 1 with the 4 bits, because I have to write the first subnet. So subnet, how many bits for subnet I have? I have 4 bits for subnet. I have 4 bits for the host. So if I say first subnet, first host, I will get something like 001 and 001, 0001, 0001. Why 0001? Because it is first subnet and I have control over 4 bits. Why again 0001? Because I have 4 bits for host, and if I convert the decimal of 1 to binary, I will have 0001. Now you calculate the decimal of this entire string. That is 0001, 0001 equal to 17. So your answer will be 202.111.222.17 for the question number 1, which is first subnet, first host. For the second subnet, third host, how you calculate it? You have again 4 bits for the subnet, right? You have 4 bits for the subnet. Now, second subnet means you have to find the binary for second, means the binary for number 2. What is the binary for number 2 if you have 4 bits? 0010. Okay. Binary for number 3, it will be 001 and 1. Is this clear? How I am writing these numbers? Second subnet, for second to value 2 I am writing 0010. For third host I am writing 0010. Is this clear or not? If this is not clear, then we need to discuss this more. Okay. So for 2 it will be 0010, for 3 it will be 0010. Now you calculate the entire decimal for 0010, 0011. It will be 35. Now the IP for second subnet third host will be 202.11.222.35. Now calculate for third subnet second host. Tell me what is the IP for the third subnet second host. Then 7th subnet third host, and then the direct broadcast for the 4th subnet. You guys have to answer me to question number 3, 4 and 5. So first of all, question number 3. Yeah, now convert this number to decimal. Okay, let's assume it is 50. Let's see. So the IP will be 202.11.222.50. Let's see if it is correct or not. Okay, I don't have the answers. It's okay. You can calculate it. Sangeeta, are you also getting it as the same? Okay. Now I think then you guys can solve 7 subnet 5th host and direct broadcasting also by yourself. Then let's move to one more question, and I will show you the direct answer for this also. In class B, network internet has subnet mask of this. Then what is the maximum number of hosts that we can connect? So let's say there comes a question like this in the exam, where this is the mask which is given for class B, and now it is asking maximum number of hosts. So now by looking at the mask, I can say that this is not a default mask. This is changed, because for class B it is 255, 255.0.0, but here it is 248.0. So definitely it is changed. So I have to calculate the maximum number of hosts that I can connect to this network. So which part is changed? And we are interested in the host part. So 248.0 is changed. So I will convert the value for 248 to binary and for 0. So this is the thing that I will get. 5 times 1 followed by 3 times 0 for 248 and all zeros for 0. Now I will count the number of zeros because for host it is 0, for network it is 1. So how many zeros I have overall? I have 11 zeros. So it will be 2 to the power 11 minus 2. Why minus 2? You already know. So this will be the answer. That is 2 to the power 11 minus 2. Is this solution clear? Is this clear? Yes. Okay. Then we will take a break for let's say 15 minutes, and then we will resume for the classless addressing and then the transport layer. Is that okay? 15 minutes of break. Okay, so we'll take 15 minutes of break now. Now the next thing that we want to discuss is the classless addressing. Till now we discussed about the classful addressing. We saw there are in classful addressing we have classes A, B, C, D and E. All are having different ranges or are having different purposes. We have discussed that all concept of subnetting and everything. So if there can be a theoretical question or a numerical question, you guys are having all the things in your hand and you can solve the problems. So you just need to revise them once or twice and solve the problems which are there in this particular PPT, and or you can revise the examples also and you are all set. Now, classless addressing. So there is a limitation to the class full addressing that despite of having properly defined classes, there is a need to do subnetting sometimes, there is a need to do supernetting sometimes. Because let's say if I have class A is having less number of networks and more number of hosts. So let's say if an organization is having class A kind of structure and it wants. Okay, red, I think. Good. So user datagram protocol is the one which is connectionless, and we have understood what is the meaning of connectionless, meaning direct data transfer, not bothered about whether the connection is established or not, whether the connection will be terminated or not. It doesn't even like pay attention to these phases. It directly transfer. So that is connectionless. It is unreliable also. Why it is unreliable? Because it doesn't perform much of flow control, error control mechanism. When the flow control and error control mechanisms are not in place, there might be a situation where the sender is sending at a very high speed and the receiver is not able to take all the data at what speed the data is being generated. So there will be a gap. And because there is no buffer implementation in UDP, the data will be lost. When the data is lost, we say it is an unreliable protocol. Now, UDP is connectionless and unreliable at the same time. Then why do we need UDP? If UDP is such a bad protocol, why do we need the UDP protocol? We need the UDP protocol to have simple scenarios. So it is very simple protocol and it has no overhead. Overhead is like overhead of maintaining a connection, overhead of performing extra check and balances. It doesn't pay any extra stuff, extra security or extra anything. So the overhead is very less, means the maintenance is very less. So if a process wants to send some small messages and does not care about the reliability, means they just want to send it, they doesn't worry whether they will be received or not, whether they will be handled or not. If that is our requirement, that we just want to send the data without any kind of reliability factor, then why do we want to take extra stuff like connection maintenance, connection termination? We will directly go with the UDP because it will be easy for us. So we can use the UDP when the messages are very small and they does not care about the reliability. Sending a small message by using UDP takes much less time and interaction between the sender and receiver as compared to TCP or SCTP. So if you're using TCP or SCTP, they will first involve with connection establishment, then they will involve with the connection termination, and in between the data transfer will happen. Also, they will perform flow control, error control, these kinds of mechanisms. So there is a lot of things that needs to be covered. So if my requirement is not that much, why I should spend much of my resources and overhead of taking all the responsibilities? I will just simply go with UDP. That's why UDP is in place instead of being connectionless and unreliable. Now the header of UDP is very simple. It has source port, it has destination port, the length and the checksum and the data that you want to send. Checksum is a basic thing which comes from the data link layer. It is just like a number which is calculated while sending the data, and it is recalculated when the data is received. If the number which was being calculated at the time of sending and the number which is calculated at the time of receiving matches, then the checksum is correct and we say that the data is not compromised. Otherwise, we say that the data is being modified in between. So this mechanism of checksum is the part of data link layer. And if the checksums are not same at the receiving and the sending side, then that is the sign that the data is being modified, is being attacked, and we discard the data. So that is the duty of checksum. Destination port, source port, we know from which source it is coming, from which destination it has to go. And the length means the length of the, not the data basically, but actually the length of the IP and port, all those kinds of scenarios basically having the length parameter. Now what next? Let's see. This is the, yeah, so read this slide and let me know if yeah, okay, there is something which I need to explain. Okay, so UDP is very simple, unreliable transport protocol. This is clear. There is no flow control and hence no window mechanism. When we say flow control, there is a concept called as sliding window protocol and a window mechanism. So window mechanism is like a kind of mechanism where you showcase your capability. For example, if you have the stamina to sit for 1 hour and to study only for 1 hour, you will tell me that I have the capacity to sit only for 1 hour. So what you are telling me, your window mechanism, your window size, that you have only 1 hour to have the class today. Okay. In the similar manner, sender and receiver will also have the window size. So if sender is sending something, the receiver will say, hey, listen, this is my window size. Please do not send anything beyond my capacity, which I cannot take. So this will enable the flow control. So the sender will get to know, okay, this is the capacity of the receiver. I should not overwhelm the receiver, and I have to maintain the flow as per the window size of the receiver. So this ensures the flow control, means the flow of the data which is happening between the sender and the receiver. Okay, so the receiver may overflow with incoming messages because UDP does not have windows mechanism. So the sender will never get to know what is the capacity of receiver. So the receiver may encounter the problem of overflow with the incoming messages. There is no error control also, except for the checksum that we have seen in the header. This means that the sender does not know if the message has been lost or duplicated. So if there is no error control mechanism, if the message was compromised in between or lost in between or duplicated in between, the sender is never going to get an acknowledgement for that. This means whenever the receiver is going to have the data, it may have the data with the defects or error through the checksum, and the user datagram is silently discarded. So basically, if the checksum doesn't match then definitely the data is discarded, but never the sender will get to know that the data was discarded, so that he has to send it again or not. So lack of flow control and error control means that the process using UDP should provide these the mechanism. So it is not only the UDP who is being in charge of everything. There will be some protocols working together with UDP. So if any protocol is taking, like, the network protocols will be there, application protocols will be there. So if any particular protocol is using UDP as the transport layer protocol, then they have to manage flow control and error control by themselves, because UDP is saying, I'm not going to take care of these things. You take care of these things if you want to work with me. So if any protocol is working with UDP, they have to take care of flow and the error control. Now to send a message from one process to another, the UDP protocol encapsulate and decapsulate the messages in the IP datagram. This is normal thing that they do, so that the data is sent from one particular process to the another particular process. So this is how UDP work, and this is unreliable and connectionless, and why it is, we have discussed it. Now, transmission control protocol. Transmission control protocol is like TCP, and it is connection oriented, meaning it is also process to process, but like UDP, it is connection oriented. It means it will create a virtual connection between the TCPs of the sender and the receiver. It will allow to have flow control and error control at the transport layer. So if any particular protocol is using TCP as the service from the transport layer, they don't have to worry about the flow control, error control, and the connection oriented stuff when they want to transfer anything. So TCP allows sending processes to deliver the data as a stream of bytes and allow the receiving processes to obtain the data as a stream of bytes, right? And both of the functions, both of the parties seems to be connected by a kind of tunnel, and this particular tunnel carries their data through the internet. Now, how it all works, sending and receiving, it also have buffers. So basically, sending and receiving process may not write or read the data at the same speed, which we know. Sender might be at higher speed, receiver might be at higher speed. So for that purpose, TCP need the storage for buffers for the storage. And these two buffers are sending buffers and the receiving buffers, for one in each direction. So you have two buffers, sending buffers and receiving buffers. Sending buffer is at sending and receiving buffer is at receiving. So at what if the data of receiver is slow, you will have a lot of data in the sending buffer. If the data received by the receiver is fast, then then you will have a lot of things in the receiving buffer. So this is how the buffers are maintained in the TCP protocol. Now the header of TCP, it will have port numbers, sequence number, acknowledgement number, some reserved bits, then control flags are there, urgent flag, important data will have urgent flag as one. You have finish protocol, you have sync flags, acknowledgement is also there. Then you have different kinds of interrupt flags. There are different flags which can be the part of control flags. Then is the window size. Window size is the size where the publicity will happen that I have the capacity of this only. Don't send me beyond this capacity. Checksums for the data thing. Urgent pointers are there to mark that the data has to be read before any other data and the data is very urgent. Then you have some optional data for the 40 bytes. Now, connection oriented service. When we say connection oriented service, what we mean by it? So whenever two parties which are involved in the communication wants to have the communication in the connection oriented manner, they have to perform 3 steps. First, establish a connection, then exchange the data, and then terminate the connection. So it's like a proper kind of contract between two parties. You get to know each other, then you share the data, and then once you are done, you end the contract. So this is the way how the connection oriented things work. 3 step. That's why it is also called as 3-way handshake. Three-way handshaking, why? Connection establishment, data transfer, and connection termination when the connection is no longer being in use. It is also reliable because of the acknowledgement mechanism, which makes the sender aware that the data was received by the receiver perfectly or not. If the data was not received by the receiver, the sender will make sure that it resends the data so that the reliability is not lost. Now, we will understand the three things which we spoke about, three-way handshaking thing. So the very first step of three-way handshaking is the connection establishment. Connection establishment happens in the full duplex mode. So here in TCP, both the parties can communicate to each other at the same time. And when these two machines are being connected, they are able to send the segments to each other simultaneously because they are operating in the full duplex mode. This implies that the parties must initialize communication and get approval from the other party before any data is transferred. So basically what happened, if I want to communicate something to you, I have to make sure that you are available to listen. I cannot be like, I will take a class when nobody is there and I say, I have completed this thing. No, this is not something that is done. We need to establish a connection first and then the data transfer will happen. And once the class is concluded, I will terminate that connection, right? So this is how it is done. Give me a second. Yes. 1 second. Okay. So 1 second. Till this time, everything is clear, right? Okay. Fine. Yes. So we were talking about the connection establishment. So basically, a connection has to be established before any data transfer starts. Now, this three-way handshaking, how this three-way handshaking is being performed. So basically, an application program called as client will try to communicate to server. This is basically client server model thing. So this client will try to make a connection with another application program called as server using TCP as the service from the transport layer. Now the process starts with the server. Server tells the TCP that it is ready to accept the connection. So server is always in the listening mode. Server is always in the listening mode and server is passively open. Why, what we say by passively open, meaning it is not saying that come and contact me. It is saying I am available, but it is not actively saying it. That's why it is passively open. If you want to connect to Google, Google is not saying connect to me, connect to me. You are going and connecting the Google server. So meaning the servers are passively open. Although the servers, even if they are passively open, they accept any connection request from the machine in the world, but they cannot make a connection itself. So servers are not the one who initiate the connections. They are the ones who get the request for the connection and then they make the connection. So the client, when they will get to know that the server is passively open, will issue an active open request, meaning I want to communicate to the server. Now the client that wishes to connect to the open server tells its TCP that it needs a connection to that particular server so that they can share some information. So this is what is being represented in this client server mechanism. Here you can see that the client server mechanism is like, it is saying that you have a client and the server. Server is always in the listening mode. So the client will send a sync packet, SYN packet, to the server. Server will receive the sequence M for the sync packet and will reply back with an acknowledgement. Sync plus acknowledgement. It will reply with a sync plus acknowledgement with a different sequence number as M plus 1 and N. So M plus 1 will be for the sync and it will be sending a new thing, that is acknowledgement. So it will be for N sequence number. Now when the client will get it, client will say, okay, I also acknowledge that I have received your sync plus acknowledgement packet, and it will send the acknowledgement with n plus 1, because n was the sequence number for the syncing thing that they wanted to have. Now the receiving of the acknowledgement will happen with n plus 1, which is sent by the client. So this 3-step sync followed by sync plus acknowledgement followed by acknowledgement is called as 3-way handshaking for connection establishment. Is this clear? Okay. Now let's move to the next one, the data transfer phase. Now once this is done, then we enter into the phase of data transfer, because the connection is established. Now we want to transfer the data. So the transfer of data will happen bidirectional, and both the server and the receiver and the client can send the data to each other. So they will now communicate with each other. Now how the connection is terminated? So connection is terminated again with the let's say it is initiated by the server or it is initiated by the client. It can be initiated by any one of them. So any of the two parties exchanging the data can close the connection, but the connection has to be start from the client. Okay, so it can be initiated by client, it has to be initiated by client, but it can be uh, closed by any one of them. So once the connection was established properly, there was some data transfer, then the connection closing request will start. How it will start? Let's assume here the initiator is the client. So client will send a fin packet, means I want to finish the communication. So now the receiver will not immediately close the connection, because receiver might have something extra to share, might have some extra response, extra request to cater. So server will say, okay, I have got your request, but let me transfer the remaining data and then we can close the connection. So for the fin, you will get an acknowledgement. Then between acknowledgement and finish, the next finish from the server, you can say the direction of both the arrows are coming in the same one. There will be the remaining data transfer which will happen from the server side. Once that is done, then it will send the fin segment that, okay, I am also done. If you want to finish the communication, we can finish the communication. And then the final acknowledgement will come from the initiator and the sessions for both of them will be closed. So the connection closure is also not something which is done at once. It is also done in 3-way handshaking. So the client will say to the server, let us close the connection. Server will say, okay, I acknowledge it, but if I have something extra to send you as per your request, let me send it. And then once I have finished it, I will send you a fin packet. You acknowledge that fin packet, and then we both are closed for the connection. So this is how the connection termination happen in the TCP. Yes, I think we are done. Yes, so 3-way handshaking for the TCP is also done. Now we have to understand few more concepts which we will discuss in tomorrow's class, related to sliding window, congestion control, and some other stuffs also for the transport layer. So we will discuss all those things in the next class, that is tomorrow. And today I think we covered a good concept on the TCP, UDP, and the entire IP. That was a good start. And yes, I think that is all done. If you have any doubt, you can ask now, or if you are done, then we will close the session, and tomorrow we will resume for the remaining stuff of networking only. Okay, thank you. So I will close the session now.